New all-time highs, not in Bitcoin, but in traditional markets, namely NASDAQ futures. As we did have a big analysis back on over in August that we've been continually updating on, every few weeks or so as new things do come in. And that was suggestive that based off these statistics and also based off the history for the past 20 years, that new all-time highs in traditional markets were extremely likely within about a year from, August. And now just a few months later, I guess it's like 4 or 5 months later, 4 months, something like that. We do have new all-time highs in NASDAQ futures, and it does look like SPY is probably getting close or gearing up to make a slightly new high as well. So what does that mean for Bitcoin? Also, I do want to remind some things for some pre-halving business, just to hopefully keep this channel a little bit more level-headed as we head into, some more interesting times, let's say. And also, if we have time, or actually, in my notes, I have how high. Yes, how high can Bitcoin go? And then also, if we have time, we'll talk about, corrections and how to kind of identify them in the more interim, like on the more short term, if time does allow. So other than that, I want to welcome you back to the Krown Crypto channel. Let's just jump right into this one, starting off with NASDAQ futures over here. And yes, indeed, we do have an ever so slightly new high, new all-time high, I should say, compared to what we did see back on over in November of 2021. The prior high was 16,767.5. Current all-time high, or as of this past week, is 16,887 and a quarter. So new all-time high has been met. I'm sure a lot of people are looking at this as a cup and handle, and to be fair, it is. It's it's a continuation formation right here, and breaking above that prior high, is going to be that initial confirmation. I suspect that more conservative people do want to be waiting for an actual closure on the monthly, but ultimately, likely new highs to be born upon this as the monthly RSI works its way back to the bullish controls. And for the first time, really in like a year, I would say, that is consistently there as well, as it does remain above all major moving averages and puts in, its first confirmed reversal. I mean, here's your low, here's your high, here's your higher low, and seeing as it's already traded above the prior high, must be a higher high. So, it does seem to be trending on timeframes that do matter for the macro. So why am I talking about this? Well, of course, the reason why, as it relates to this channel, is that what does that mean for Bitcoin? Because anytime that we have seen NASDAQ futures make new all-time highs, while Bitcoin was also alive, I mean, obviously there was more history than this, but how long after NASDAQ made new all-time highs, after having like a correction or a corrective phase, I should say, did it take for Bitcoin to make new all-time highs? Or sorry, not new all-time, actually new all-time highs, yes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put on my drawing tools in the background, and the orange chart will represent Bitcoin. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of everything. I'm going to put NAS on a line chart as well. Yeah, that's going to make a lot more sense. And as we can see right here, what I've done is my eye's been like super itchy recently. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Like also behind my ears as well. What the fuck is this? But I need to know. But what I've done here is I've gone ahead and I've looked at all of those prior times and found something somewhat interesting. I do think, in the sense that the times that it took for Bitcoin to make new all-time highs after NASDAQ just printed new all-time highs after major correction as well, was somewhat consistent actually at about a little over half a year. We can see this first one over here. Well, the first one's technically over here, but Bitcoin made new all-time highs like literally the next month, so it doesn't really count. But this first one over here, I would say, about half a year, 153 days, as Bitcoin did take in its little slump off of its current high, and then took, about 153 days in order to make new all-time highs from that particular position. Same thing over here, coming out of the 2014-2015 bear market, NASDAQ making new highs right here. Bitcoin, at the same time to new all-time highs, did take about 214 days, so a little bit more than half a year, about two-thirds of a year. And then, of course, we do have a bit of an interesting situation right here, in the sense that NASDAQ in 2018 and 2019 did make new all-time highs, made new all-time highs in 2019 from the 2018 correction. But Bitcoin, in this case, did take a lot more time on this one. Now, of course, there was the old Rona dump somewhere in there. So you might say it's a bit of an outlier situation. Perhaps yes. If we measure from that next point for NASDAQ, making new highs, then it's more like, that is incorrect. That is 153 days as well. So we have basically 2 times where we've seen 5 bars or 153 days about, it is a monthly, so it's kind of estimating there. And then also 1 time where we've seen about 214 days, and then a bit of an outlier over here, again, alongside a black swan. So I would argue it's probably less relevant, but ultimately, what does that kind of give us as far as an idea? About half a year on the lower end, maybe a little bit more on the upper end. Again, 3 times doesn't really make a trend or doesn't really help us out too much. But, it's a Sunday. There's not too much else to be speaking about. And for what it's worth, that's what we do have. And it is interesting to see that those numbers are more or less consistent with each other despite having a low sample. So, what would this essentially imply as to how soon, realistically, could Bitcoin make new highs? Well, new highs again above its closing highs over here, about sorry, I'm on the wrong one, but about $60,000 basically. It would be around Q3 to Q4 of this next year. So the back half of this next year, perhaps Bitcoin does make new all-time highs. In between that time, however, Bitcoin likely continues to, more or less just fill out the range on the macro timeframes. Probably gonna have a major correction somewhere in there as well. And that brings us to our next topic, that brings us perfectly to our next topic right around here. So again, we are in a pre-halving year, or we're in a halving year, I suppose, basically. And there's been something very, very interesting about all these prior halvings. Let me go to this one right here. It's been something very, very interesting about all these prior halvings in the sense that there has been, after the parabolic blow off top from the prior cycle, a rally that exists between, the low of that cycle and then, of course, the halving date. So we can go to this first one over here in 2010, 2011. Again, parabolic blow off top. Here's your low. There's that nice downtrend. And then Bitcoin breaks it. Boom, rallies all the way up. There's your pre-halving, I should say as well. Or sorry, your halving as well. All the green vertical bars represent those halving dates, I should explain. Doing a terrible job of that right now, but I didn't have my coffee this morning. So there's my excuse. But yeah, in this case, breaks that long-term downtrend, rallies up, finds that next major high before the halving between the 618 and the 786. Remember that, 'cause it's going to come up again. And then, 2014, 2015. What do you know? Long-term downtrend based off of the parabolic blow-off high. Breaks it right here, rallies up into the halving. This one actually right before as well. Where does the rally find itself? Between the 618 and the 786. Very interesting. Then dumps off, pretty harshly after that, I should say as well. And then, what do you know? 2018, 2019, same thing. That major, that massive long-term downtrend. Bitcoin breaks it over here, puts in a rally, actually perfectly to the 786 in this case, before the halving. And the rest is history, I suppose. And so what can we deduce from this? Well, again, coming into the halving, which we presume is somewhere around May of this coming year, 2024, April, May, I believe. They don't know the exact date, obviously, because, there's some ambiguity with the way that blocks are mined and shit like that. But looking at it right here, what would that essentially imply? It would imply that, one, we do expect a rally before that time. Yeah, we've already gotten that, fucking obvious. But how high can that rally go? Somewhere between the 786 and as high as the somewhere between the 618 and the 786, and, particularly as high as the 786 is all that we've seen in history. So looking at it right here and putting things into perspective, let me get rid of the LARP lines for right now, but we do see that rally actually pretty much exactly in between the 618 and the 786. Okay, very, very interesting, right? Well, again, we could in a more interesting situation see a move all the way up to 786, but realistically, it is starting to look more and more like the overwhelming majority of this current rally is done. Maybe there's one more spike a little bit higher, closer to that 786, which is as much as $50,000. But ultimately, if you're a betting man and you're looking at these numbers right here, it's no longer that easy call of just saying, hey, things are just headed directly north, as it was in the past few months, realistically, that we've been speaking about on this channel. So that is the main message that I want to be having right now. It's like coming into the halving, again, that gives us like about 3-4 months. There's very likely going to be a major correction. And we've already seen the majority of this rally very, very likely as well. So what's going to be the real next big play? The real next big play is actually searching for that next short, to be honest with you, because as we have seen in the past, all of these corrections from that rally, that pre-halving rally, have been pretty significant. I'll start you off with this first one over here back in 2010, 2011, where you did see the rally top right here. Boom, comes down. It doesn't look like much on the chart, but that is a 40% move. Like, that's fucking big. It's fucking big. 40% off of current price action would put, it's almost like half off. It would basically put Bitcoin back down around, I don't even want to do it, man. Yeah, about $27,000. I'm not saying that's exactly going to happen right here. Obviously, there's going to be some variance in these numbers, but similar things over here as well, right? In 2016, after the prior, after this rally, from top to bottom, about a 38.5% decrease. It was short-lived, to be fair, but still kind of nasty right there. For the one in 2018, 2019, again, pretty nasty dump off. You already know where I'm going with this one. I would say that because it was, a black swan, you might call it that, it's probably better to measure it off of closures rather than wicks in this case. And that was still, even on closures, a 42% move. So now that I'm kind of looking at it, like, all of the prior ones have been pretty fucking nasty. If we go off of closures over here, how bad would this one be? It'd be more like 15%. That would be nice. That would be really, really nice. What about this one over here on closures? Yeah, about 15% as well. So ultimately, there's likely going to be a big move to the downside before the halving. Historically speaking, that has been very, very relevant. We've already seen the gross majority of this rally. Maybe there's one more push to the upside. I personally think that there could be very easily be another push to the upside. $48,000 would not be out of the question at all. But that's kind of, in my opinion, starting to play with fire here, just because we're so deep into this one, or likely so deep into this one that, the probability is going to start to go against you just based off of time. If this one fails to really continue in the next, I would say, 2 months. I do think that Bitcoin either continues from like right now, in the next like month, 3 to 4 week span, or we've already kind of seen the top of this rally. But personally speaking, I do think that Bitcoin will see another high on this rally. I do think that Bitcoin will probably get closer to $48,000 if I had to guess. But again, that's just personal opinion. Take from that what you will. I just want to be presenting this sort of data and information just in its raw format. Now, the next question, of course, is how high can Bitcoin get in this next cycle? And again, this is something that we spoke about before as well, but I just wanted to go back into it because I did realize that there's a few more interesting things. And also, I just think that these are important things to remind ourselves, especially on like a Sunday, like a slow Sunday when there's not too much price action going on, to kind of temper our expectations coming into this next cycle. And basically what I've done here is I've taken a Fibonacci extension from all the prior cycle highs, anchored from the cycle highs to the prior cycle lows, and found that it actually had a pretty good means of kind of suggesting where the next major high would be. And so for this first one over here, you can see that Bitcoin rallied up to the 2.272 extension. Okay, very, very interesting, because that's exactly where it rallied up to on the next cycle in 2014 and 2015, hitting that high right there at 2.272. But as we can see, even pound for pound, the percentage gain on these cycles was significantly less. This first cycle over here gained like 42,500%. It's fucking crazy, by the way. Personal opinion, maybe. The next cycle only, in comparison, gained 66%. So significant step down right there, like severely significant step down in terms of percent return, despite hitting that same Fibonacci level. Then in 2018, 2019, or 2018 to our current cycle high, Bitcoin reached up not to the 2.272. It actually only got to the 2-spot extension, which was rather interesting as well, or at least in my opinion, it's interesting. Maybe it's not for you. I don't know. And again, these are done on a log scale. I should add as well. But from the actual percentage gained, again, another major step down at 1760%. these are fucking crazy gains, by the way, but, compared to what it was before, much less. Now, we do expect diminishing returns on a maturing asset, just natural. It's the reason why SPY or the major US bourse is moving like less than 1% in a day and people go crazy. Not really, but you know what I mean. Whereas Bitcoin goes 1% in a day and it's like, oh, it's Tuesday and I'm bored. So my point is that we can't really expect this cycle to get, or at least I would not, when I start to hear targets already, because, Bitcoin's been doing quite well over the past few months, but, you're starting to hear those crazy targets of like 250,000, 500,000, 1 million, 5 million, you're too bearish, Krown, 10 million. These are unrealistic, at least from what we can gather here. And it would be extremely unlikely for Bitcoin to even get above the 2 spot extension, even on log scale, which is $240,000, because all of these have stepped down massively from, cycle to cycle. And then just looking at the percent gained numbers, it's decreasing by a rate of, I'm trying to do some mental math, but I can't do it. It's decreasing significantly is what I'm trying to say, by a factor of like 7, almost 7. Yeah, this one's 42, this one's 65. So a little bit less than 7, then 65 to 17. Okay, yeah, so it's more like 6.5 maybe. So, we really wouldn't expect like, a crazy gainer over here as well. Maybe only 500, 600% gain from the low, which still pretty impressive, I do believe. But where would that put Bitcoin? That put Bitcoin in the shallow 100,000s, which to me is like, it's already on the moon, right? But I would imagine this cycle will certainly not see above the 2 extension at $240,000. The 1 spot 618 is probably a little bit more reasonable. It's like a higher upper bound at $144,500, and even the 1 spot 272. I mean, that's 91,000. So I expect that Bitcoin probably finds its way somewhere between these two. Before the next cycle high, which is probably like a few years, 2 to 3 years out. I don't know, but yeah, just kind of tempering expectations right there. We didn't really get time here to talk about corrections. I'll just very briefly go. Do I want to do it on this video? Basically, short term. Actually, let's just go over here. Basically, short term for Bitcoin, HPDR bands, as long as it's below the median, which is currently 44,200 and has not really stepped down as I thought it would in the past few days here. It is coming in the next couple of days, like it is just by the nature of it, but it's interesting to see it so high. Bitcoin still in like short-term corrective territory, can very easily retest the lows of this, of this consolidation thus far. But again, if we see that come down tomorrow and then Bitcoin, close above it, that's going to be my indication that Bitcoin's ready to make that move up, probably closer to 47 to 48,000 bucks. Top side of the 50% range now is 47,000 and change. So, again, I do think that in alignment with also what we're looking at as far as the halving goes, that pre-halving rally, I do think that Bitcoin can still very easily put in a move up there and then play out like a major nasty downside move somewhere around like 30%, let's say. I know the prior ones were 40, but seems like a lot at this point. Seems like a lot to me. But yeah, anyways, my camera turned off. Well, fuck it. You don't need to see my face anyways. I didn't even realize till now. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. As always, I do want to wish you the best of the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.